I'm doing a workshop on communication, and one of the first things I'm going to say is that 30 minutes is nowhere near enough time to talk about this topic, because I could talk for about like 6 weeks, and I'm stuck at 30 minutes, and I'm probably going to need somebody to start waving when I start going off topic. I normally present without PowerPoint, so today is my first PowerPoint presentation, which was another challenge for me to overcome today. So if I forget to press the button, also tell me. So this is one of my most favourite photos about communication, that it's crucial. It's the most essential skill a child can learn. But have a look, are there any words in that photo? What can you see? Yes, I can see that smile, I can see that gaze, I can see that connection. And that's what communication is really all about. It's all about connecting with others. And without communication, kids get lost. All right. I did it, I pressed the button. All right, so the first thing I really want to set the scene on is that you really need to create a supportive team. You're your child's best advocate, and you need to be the centre of the team of professionals that you develop around you, and this team can support you for years. So some of my kids have started with me at 3, sometimes earlier, and they're coming back at 20. They're coming back at 25, and some invite me to their weddings. Bit of a worry. So we see people from birth to death, and that shocks some people because we keep focusing on early intervention, which is very, very important, but intervention is a lifelong support, and we're there for the whole time that you need us to be there. And kids keep learning. They don't stop learning. At 20, they might be ready to learn some of the biggest skills that they need to move forward. Now, every therapist is going to tell you that you need to do regular therapy at home. If you want to see outcomes, you want to have daily follow-up. And one of the things that I say is it doesn't mean you have to be sitting at a table and a chair and be doing some tabletop activities. You can be doing speech therapy in the pool and jumping on the trampoline. So just remember that to really get outcomes, you need to be working together as a team. We've had so many parents just this year come in and they see their speechy at school, they get no notes. They don't know what the goals are. We need to know where the goals are for our kids so that we can practice and follow up at home. The other thing that I think is really important is that you know where your child is at. So I've given you more slides in your handout than I'm presenting on today, because I want you to have an awareness of where they're really at and where they can head to next. So an important one is to have open communication with your team. If you're not happy with something or you feel the goals aren't right, then you need to have a chat to your speechy, your OT, your physio, the teacher. You need to communicate, because we aren't mind readers, and sometimes it's a run-in, run-out type of session. Mine aren't usually, but it's really good to be able to talk about what's going on in your family and for you at home. Now, we often focus on kids with different levels of difficulties. So today I'm starting with the kids who are struggling with foundation skills. And I want you to have a look through some of these areas that I'm going to talk about today and think about where your children are at. Where are their struggles? And then we'll talk about some of the strategies for some of the areas that we're going to talk about today. So I see lots of kids with foundation skills issues. They don't have engagement. They're not connected with people. They're in their own world. They're not showing an interest and curiosity in others, and all these basic foundation skills are really required to develop great communication. All right, some strategies, and some really easy strategies, is that we can follow the child's lead and we meet them where they're at. And we need to recognise where they're playing. So if they're playing in a sensory way with a toy and we want to come up and make the toy a symbolic toy, we probably really need to match them to where they are. Otherwise the child gets the toy and turns it around and around and around and around and cuts you out because you haven't recognised their idea. I like to use big affect, so make my face really expressive, use my voice, use my body. And we want to make their ideas bigger than they can so that they need us to keep in the play. And we want to keep circles going back and forth and for us to be exchanging. And this is where turn taking starts long before words. Kids actually are turn taking on the change table when you're changing the nappy. We have this back and forth smiling going forward, and we want back and forth. All right, some kids get really stuck in developing their speech and language skills because they're really poor at their copying and imitation. So helping kids to learn to copy is one of the first steps for some of my lowest kids on top of engagement. So, and I get them to start copying by first I might start copying them so they can work out that, I know what their ideas are. I'm going to copy them because then they're going to work out I'm going to copy. But I don't go straight for speech sounds. I might do actions and motor movements that's already something that they do, and then I might start on things that they never do. Like, I want to see if we can make this a game that goes back and forth. Who's got kids that when you bring out the toys, you disappear? Does anybody have kids that when you bring out the toy, you don't exist, and that child could exist with that toy or that screen, we all know the screens, for the rest of the day? Yep, and you've lost them. You can't get in their play because that toy is so engaging and draws them in that you don't exist. Sometimes for those kids we put the toys away and we have some people play where you are the toy. Non-verbal communication. So speeches are always talking about words, but actually 60 to 90% of our messages that we give and receive all day are non-verbal. We communicate with our whole bodies, not just our face and words. So who knows how their partner feels before they've even got into the kitchen or you've seen them? So did you hear how the door got closed when they came into the car? And they flung the front door open, and just the way their feet move tells you what kind of mood they're in. And then you can say, oh, darling, I dented the car. That conversation might last for tomorrow, because you can tell already before they've walked in how they're feeling. But our kids aren't seeing this. They're taken by surprise all day. So in a classroom, all the kids know what's going to happen next because they can read the teacher's non-verbal communication. So they look, and the teacher's looking at the teacher looks at the clock or their watch, they look at the door, they look at their hat, they get their bag out and put it on the desk. Long before they say, it's time to go out to PE. They've already given you all the cues. All the other kids are ready, nearly packed up because they've all worked out the cues. Some of our kids haven't even seen anything that's gone on. How about when you are deciding to go to Bribey Island or go out to the beach, and you've spent all day or all morning packing a picnic, making sandwiches, getting out boogie boards, putting on the hats, getting out the sunscreen, all right? And there's one child who's still watching TV, or it's like a total surprise. Oh, we're going to the beach, because they didn't read any of those signs. Does that sound like one or two of your kids? All right. So, some really easy nonverbal strategies is to try and give you nonverbal cues before you say something verbally. Try and encouraging them to look at you. Sometimes I'll make a really interesting noise to get them to look at me, and then I'll do a nonverbal action, and then I'll give the words. Okay? But if we always wait for the words, so the child is always waiting to be told, because they're not watching out for the cues, we need to develop those. Something like watching their favourite TV show with the volume off. That's a simple one. What's going on? How does that person feel? How did you know how they felt? We can play games and give all the instructions without saying a word. You can build a block castle just by using your eyes, looking at the block you want the child to pick up, and then showing them where you want them to put it with your eyes. You can do it with your finger. Because we have kids who can't follow a point. So the teacher in the playground points to go over there, and the child's looking at the finger and they have no idea where they have to go. So because they're in a big playground and they've got no idea to follow a point. This is one of my students just in the last week or so, because I have one who comes down from Toowoomba, and this is some of our goals, is to work on pointing and eye gaze. And what am I looking at? Or eye pointing. So when I'm pointing with my eyes, what am I looking at? And she's like, with my finger, with pointing, she's like, oh, the light. She thinks I'm pointing to the light. And I'm like, no, pretend I'm about to touch it. And then she's like, oh, the door. Because she really can't follow a point. And when it comes to eye gaze, she had no idea where I was looking. So she had no idea what I was thinking about, because she wasn't following where I was. All right, does that make sense? Now, one of the biggest things I see is that we teach all this stuff about emotions by using faces of cards. Cards of faces, right? I always do things like that. Right, so we take a photo of someone's face, and that's what emotions are. But we feel emotions with our whole body, and our whole body communicates our emotions, and it's really important that we use video clips and more information than just a photo of a face. I can give you the same test on the photos of faces, and you will all give me different emotions. But it's how somebody moves, how they put their bag down, how they pick up their coffee cup, how they put their coffee cup down, tells you about how they're feeling. So we have feelings that go to our fingers, to our toes, and it affects everything we do. Okay, the big one, augmentative and alternative communication, AAC. And there's such a huge range of AAC systems out there, including just objects. And it will depend on the child's cognition and what their level of thinking is as to what the best system is for that child. But there are objects, there's PECs, there's static displays, there's communication devices, there's apps for the iPad. When I first started, there was no iPad. We had these whopping great big communication devices that each cost $5,000, and they sat at school on the bench charging. All right, what about quad books and sign language? Who hears signs? Who knows some sign language? Yes, so I love signing, and I signed since I was in early high school, and it's my second language that I fall back to when I'm in really noisy environments and I'm not coping. All right, you don't have to be non-verbal to use AAC. And I think sometimes we see that a child with an AAC device is non-verbal, but actually we can use AAC to help kids express themselves, can reduce their frustration, support language learning, and enhance conceptual or cognitive development. So it's not just for expression, but it supports communication. And one of the most biggest things I always say with AAC is that you use the AAC with them, and it can support kids' comprehension. So when kids are stressed, the first thing that goes is their ears. They don't hear you. So using your visual schedules, using your visual pictures, but using their AA system back to them really supports their comprehension. And what is really important for us to support their expression and the way they communicate with AAC is to actually use the AAC device to give the messages back to them. You need to be using the AAC just as much as they are, because that will actually encourage them to use it more, and it'll actually develop their skills with the AAC device. So, AAC strategies. Choose situations that you first want to use an AAC device with. That's social, that's motivating, and it's frequent. Okay, so traditionally, we've started by teaching requests for food, but once they get that food and that item, the interaction stops. But if we're doing bubbles or cuddles or tickles or raspberries, all of those can be used with AAC, and they're more likely to be involved with those. Choosing vocabulary is one of the next biggest issues, and we have to think about what would other peers say and what words would they use. Use the kids' vocabulary. And we have to watch, this is where the limitations come into AAC devices. A device is only as good as the person who created the vocabulary. And so sometimes if we haven't put the words there that the child wants to say, they really have nothing to say. And sometimes we're so limited to the I want kind of concept, we're not doing the wow. So think about going bowling. Now, I have a secret. I'm a little bit older. You've worked out that I possibly went to uni when I was like a child. No, but I've never gone bowling. But what kind of words would you put on like an AAC vocabulary for bowling? I want the shoes, I want the ball, I want the drink, I want the chips. Or do we put on, wow, great strike, oh, nearly got it. what other words can we say that a child in the next alley would be saying? Because that's what we're really looking at, is giving that equal rights to say and express emotions and feelings. The hardest thing I have, for those of you who don't have children in the younger grade, this is a comment for people who are older and adults, is what type of words do we put on devices? And there's a lot of carers and agencies that don't want adults to have swear words on their device or their communication system because they don't want an adult to swear, and yet the person next to them who's verbal can say anything they want. And a carer can swear at the child or the adult, but the adult isn't able to say anything back. So it's something to think about. What words are acceptable for you as a family? What words do you all say that you don't really want to say, but maybe there's a word that's a little bit lighter on? If your kids are like in primary school, this is possibly not something you want to be putting on your device that goes to school, because the teacher doesn't really want to hear that interrupt their entire session. But it's something to really think about, is giving them equal rights to communicate. And as our clinic, we're really focused on verbal, getting kids verbal, and using AAC as a supportive strategy because of the limitations that all AAC devices come with. Right. Choose the best means for the situation, okay? You don't need to be limited to one AAC system. It needs to be portable. So I had a child who had cerebral palsy and Down syndrome. She could hardly walk, and her communication device was like the size of this lectern. And I'm like, no, it's not going to work because it's going to sit over there on the bench and it's never going to happen. I like putting communication wherever that communication situation happens. So if it's about videos, I've got everything around the videos, around the TV. If it's about the bathroom, I've got everything there about the bathroom routine. Can it get wet? We live in Queensland and lots of our kids love the beach, swimming and the bathroom and playing with water, and our devices can't get wet sometimes because they don't survive. So thinking about systems that might be specialised for those kind of situations when water is involved, because iPads are not waterproof or trampoline proof. And I've got kids who want to talk on the trampoline, and the iPad doesn't do very well when you drop it off the trampoline. All right. AAC needs to be accessible. It needs to be within reach, and it can't be on the top of the fridge or in your school bag. And we used to spend millions of dollars on AAC devices, and they used to sit at school. And if the communication system is only being used for school, then it's not a communication system that's working for that individual. It has to be something that you can use in the home environment and when they're out. Now, model AAC every time you're talking with your child, and if you can't say it with their AAC device, neither can they. So that will make you really think about your vocabulary. If you're using it to them, it'll make you think, oh, I didn't put the word well done, high five on my AAC. All right, now language is incredibly complex, and it can be broken into receptive language, which is understanding, expressive language, the ability to construct language, and pragmatics, the use of language. And within these areas are word, knowledge, and grammar. But I don't have time to sit here and give you every strategy for language that I know, because you'd be here for a very long time. But I'm just going to give you some simple strategies for language. Receptive language. Have their attention. So make sure their face isn't looking at a screen when you're saying, put your shoes on, because what they're looking at is what they're thinking about. So if they're looking at the screen, they're thinking about what's on the screen. They're not hearing what you're saying. Deep coding of words as they're in the moment. So whether it's a noun or an emotion or an action word, there's no point teaching the word jumping unless you're jumping. Don't assume they are understanding all the words you say. I regularly get people go, oh, they don't understand when I say put the rubbish in the bin, so they understand in. And I go, do they really understand in? Because you never put the rubbish under the bin. You don't put the rubbish in your handbag. So they hear the word rubbish, and they're hearing and understanding one word, and they know from the context that the rubbish goes in the bin, but it doesn't mean they understood all the words. Say it another way if they're not understanding, and use your visuals. Because when their system shuts down and their ears shut down, they don't hear you. One of my students got really, really upset because she had to do something and she didn't understand, so she locked herself in the toilet cubicle at school. And I'd said for a long time, she needs visuals, and everyone kind of ignored me. Anyway, they slid a photo. She wouldn't come out because she was just shut down. They slid a photo under the door. She unlocked the door, walked out and got on the bus. But she needed that support to be able to do it because she couldn't hear them say, "You're just getting on the bus today, you're not going in the yellow car." But she couldn't hear that because all she heard was not going in the bus, and that was it. She was shut down in the bathroom and she wasn't coming out, and they'd already tried 5 people to force her on the bus, which hadn't worked. Expressive language. Model what you want them to say, and don't say such and such. Or the one that I really love is, "What's this, Johnny? What's this, Johnny? What's this, Johnny?" And I'm like, no, just say the word you want them to say. That meaning, sometimes we focus all on the nouns too, pictures of things, but our meaning is in the action words, and verbs carry lots of meaning. So when I say daddy car, what am I saying? Daddy's under the car, Daddy's fixing the car, Daddy's washing the car, Daddy's driving the car, Daddy took the car to work. So we really need to watch those action words because daddy and car doesn't tell you as much information as the verbs. When kids get stuck, repair and expand what they say. That's a really simple strategy, and that's very simplified. Because what I wanted to really hone in on today were things like the high-level language skills. Often we do a language assessment, and the one that speeches always do is the self, the clinical evaluation of language fundamentals. Oh, they're fine. They're pretty okay. And they can be okay, and I think our girls with Fragile X actually fall into this category. They can pass a self, and that's all the assessment the therapist did, but we know they're not really getting and understanding the context and all of the information. So high-level language skills is usually being skipped because they got a self, they got a score, that's fine, you don't need to see the speech therapist. But have a look at all the things we do in high-level language. Complex reasoning and problem solving. How many of you had to work out a problem before you got here today? Anybody with kids, yep, had to do that. So I had so many problems before coming to today, and I don't wear shoes normally. I have thongs as my basic, and in my office I never wear shoes, so my parents are always impressed. I bought shoes on Saturday because I'm like, well, you'll have to have shoes. Get over that problem. The next problem was I didn't do PowerPoint, so I had to get over that problem. The next one is I have a 2-year-old and my carer is sick. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't bring my 2-year-old today. So I needed to come up with other solutions. We problem solve all the time, but we problem solve silently in our head. Kids think you're magical because you solve problems all day. In fact, they don't even know you have problems or make mistakes because we don't really talk through the process. So who here's got a girl who's having some difficulties and you hadn't really thought about these as language skills? Because we don't often think about language at this level. Predicting, inferencing. When they start doing reading comprehension and they can only answer the factual questions and they can't infer between the lines. That they're having problems using humour. They have problems with sarcasm, non-literal language, and they don't get the main idea of things. They get all the little details, but not the main idea. I'm doing very well at pressing the buttons. Okay, so some strategies to use is to model the thinking you do out loud. Start problem solving out loud. Oh, wow. Now I've got to go to West End today and I've got no fuel in the car. Okay, all right. So I need to go to the service station. Oh, wait a minute. I haven't filled up, I don't have any money in my purse to pay for this fuel. Oh, that's right. I've got a card. But we don't problem solve out loud. We just solve all these problems. So explaining the steps as you go through, and then looking at things like teaching them what are the clues, what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you smell, what you know, and what world knowledge you might be like drawing on, right? I knew the traffic would be really bad today, okay, because we were starting at a certain time and Brisbane traffic getting into the city is pretty hectic, okay, so I knew I had to leave with extra time. what our personal experience is. So kids seem to be surprised that on every Saturday you get ready to go swimming, but you go swimming every day because they're using that personal experience that on Saturdays you go swimming. All right, I like to talk about flexible thinking and getting kids to encourage you to give you 3 possible answers. Now, if that's a cat, the answer is cat, but I'm talking about what happened. Why could it have happened? What's another reason it could have happened? What's another one? And getting that flexibility in thinking. Problem solving. What else could we do? What else could we do? If my car broke down, how else was I going to get here today? An Uber, because a taxi is never going to come from Redcliffe. But how else could I get here? I could catch a train. So we can think flexibly in getting kids to come up with multiple answers. Okay, the big one, social skills. And we've used this term social skills for a really long time. But social skills are the output, the behaviours that you see. So think about all the things that you think of as social skills. Eye contact. Greetings, hi, having a conversation, initiating, maintaining, concluding, personal space, and the list is endless. When I talk about social skills, people can just keep listing and listing and listing and listing, right? But social skills are more than just the output side that we see. Why do some of the kids with Fragile X have trouble with eye contact? Okay, so if you go into a high school class and you ask a question and you don't want to answer it, what do? You don't look. Okay, so eye contact can be part of that issue of I'm going to just drop everything down and lose that eye contact. And I think for kids, what's appropriate at 4 isn't appropriate at 7, and then it's not appropriate at 15, and the rules change. What you could get away with at 4 isn't what you can get away with at 40. Right, so we want to develop strong social skills. We need to focus on the underlying social thinking so that kids can understand. And social thinking is Michelle Garcia Winner's work, and I've given her website on my handout. Okay, she's really about a social competency model, not just looking at these, just listing off some social skills and ticking them off, but really getting kids to understand so that they can start learning how to behave in every environment, not just in one environment, and that those rules will change as they get older. So she's all about hidden rules, thinking with your eyes, the group plan, and that we teach them skills that support them for a life of social interactions. Because if I gave you a big printout on how to cope at a cocktail party, all right, it's been a long time since I've been to a cocktail party, but you know those computer printouts? I'd just use a box. Now, if you're meeting a friend, you're going to interact differently than if you're meeting a stranger. Oh, here's your boss. Okay, now I'm going to interact really differently when it's my boss. So there's all these rules that change based on everybody. And what it really comes down to is how we want other people to see us socially, because that's going to control what we do. So who dances down the aisles when they go to the shopping centre and goes to Woolies? Maybe if the song is really good, but really, or do we push in line at Woolworths? Look, I'm really busy. I'm just going to push my trolley in front of yours because I'm more important than you are. I'm going to do this. But what controls us is that we want other people to think well of us, and that actually is how we really operate in the world. Otherwise, we would all have taken extra yummy things at morning tea and afternoon tea. We wouldn't have left any for anybody else, and we would have said, push everyone out of the line for tea and coffee because my need is more than yours. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is hi. Who here has a child who can't say hi? Who here has a child who can say hi but doesn't use hi? So I've got a whole range of kids who don't say hi. And the first thing is that they don't respond to a hi. People say hi to them and they just never say hi. They don't say hi back. Their response rate is 0. And I actually have a student who was like 15 and he had never said hi in his life because he was so anxious about saying hi. So one of my students who's 0 response rate, our goal is just to say hi backwards. Do you know how hard it is to say hi? We just think it's easy, isn't it? Right? Okay. Hi. Can you do hi? There's so many rules about hi, and we need to practice hi until it gets really easy to do. You can't yell hi when someone is walking up the hallway when they're at the top of the hallway. It's such a timing issue. You can't do this, hi, and jump out at them because they might have a heart attack. All right, but you can also not like pass them by and then go, hi, you know, and they've passed you and they're 2 metres down the hallway. The timing for all our social interactions is very, very fast, and some of our kids need to overlearn how to do these incredibly quickly. Am I going for time? Because I've 5 minutes. I'm doing super well. Hi. So the next one is taking care of yourselves. This is a journey, not a race. And for those of you who have children with Fragile X or any difficulties, you're in this for the long run. And you're going to have to be there to support them when they're adults. So you're caring for other kids. You're caring for ageing parents or ageing grandparents. And we're not very good at taking care of ourselves. We can sometimes identify that we have anxiety issues, but do we get ourselves help? So just to remind you that there are things called a Better Mental Health Plan, and that you can access sessions with a psychologist through your GP, and please take that opportunity to take care of yourself. And it sounds really glib, but you have to be here to help us help them, and they're not going to move forward. So it's really important that we're really honest with ourselves of where we're at, and when someone says, are you okay? It's okay to say, no, I'm not really okay, which my staff found out at the beginning of the week when I just lost it because I didn't have a carer and I hadn't done PowerPoints and the whole rest of it. Okay, make time for yourself. So as a carer, and you've got more than one child, you have no time. Do one thing a week. Who can think of one thing a week that they do for themselves right now? Because I know I'm not doing one thing a week, so I need to speak to myself about this. But are you doing one thing a week? What's one thing a week you could add to your schedule that could take care of you? All right? And I know it's hard, but we want you in here for the long run, and we don't want you to burn out. One of the things we were talking about in the office this week is therapy fatigue. Because parents see us for a long time, and sometimes we all get tired, and sometimes we need just a refresher and just to work out where we're going. All right, so I'm actually going to finish early because I culled a whole lot of slides out of my workshop, which are in the handout, so you can always have a look. So have a look. If you've got any questions, you can contact me anytime. Okay, maybe not midnight. I've got my phone number there, my email address, the website. Give us a call if you've got any questions that you don't want to ask today. And thank you. You've done very well.